The way I see it is that competition in and of itself is not good or bad. And this is like the monk mindset on 99% of things, that this mug is not good or bad. It could be filled with water or it could be filled with poison.
Yes.
And so competition, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
As monks, our competition is in how much love and respect we show to each other.
That's your competition?
Like that's what you compete on.
Or how long can we meditate for?
No.
I can meditate longer than you.
So if any monk is sitting, and I did this plenty of times.
Really?
If I sat there and I thought, oh yeah, look at him, he's scratching his back. He got out like
he
that.
moved.
Your meditation just got destroyed. Right? All the value. And so monks will never ask how long you meditate. They focus on how deep you meditate. And someone who meditates deep doesn't go on about how deep it was.
Right.
But you compete for showing respect. You compete for serving each other. You compete for how well you can collaborate. And I feel like you live this.
Yes.
Like
yes.
I feel like you have this.
I didn't used to do that.
Yeah.
But the last 7
you do
years,
that now. Like you think like a monk. Like I feel like we're always trying to find a way where we can be better friends to each other and support each other.
Yeah.
And so you're competing on that. And that's a positive competition that I think you can have. So you can still use, and this is the beautiful thing about the monk mindset, you can use any thing in a positive way.
Competition is fantastic. I think it's amazing. I think most people just use it in a negative way. Most people look at competition as either I need to crush that person or they're so good and I'm never going to be as good, so why even try? Where instead what you want to do is use it as a source of inspiration. To say this is exciting. I've got a worthy rival. I've got something to go and move towards. People often say don't compare yourself to others, and I think it's beginner level advice. Let me explain what I mean. I think comparison at the beginning is unhealthy because we're using it in a really negative way. Oh, this person, look at how good they are. I'm never going to be like them, etc. So like, just go run your own race. But when you run your own race, this is key, you don't get as good a time as when you're running with other people. You don't get your personal best when you're by yourself. You get your personal best when there's competition. The key to comparing yourself to other people is to not kick yourself down, but rather to kick yourself forward. To say, this is what's possible. Look what others are doing. I didn't even think of something like that. And again, instead of kicking yourself down to say that you suck and say that's what's possible, I'm going to go off and get it. But if you don't get the kick that comes from the competition or comparison, you stay stuck. Your growth stays super slow. The key is to kick yourself forward, where most people will kick themselves down. I remember when I was doing my YouTube challenge, I got started on my channel. I really wanted to grow. It took me so long to grow. You look at my journey, 4 years in, I'm still at 700 subscribers and something. It was just brutal. And part of it was there were no role models. There was nobody else doing anything. And I felt like I was speaking to a vacuum where some people did care. I had some hardcore subscribers and picked people up along the way. But education and entrepreneurship wasn't a thing on YouTube when I started. And as I started to gain a little bit of traction and I got my agent, I wanted to have some competition. So I asked him, who is the biggest person at this agency on YouTube? And at the time he said Grant Cardone. It's like, okay, I'm going to beat Grant Cardone. And Grant doesn't even care, right? It's not a two-way competition. It was a one-way competition. He's ahead of me. I want to go catch up and pass him. And it became a target internally to say, I want to be the biggest YouTube channel at this agency. Not because of ego and not because of pride and not because of wanting to crush Grant or somebody else, just that as something fun. You know, like there's a target, not just something in the future to say, oh, I want to build something big, right? The competition helps you get better. And then when we passed him, became, okay, well, who's next? The idea is still service, right? The reason to get up every day and do your thing is not to beat the other person. The reason is to help, is to serve, is to create, right? The reason I make the videos is because I want to solve the world's biggest problem. I want people to believe in themselves more. That inspires me every day to get up and do something, whether it's videos or my books or lives or whatever it is that I'm doing on the day. That's the reason. But having competition helps you push a little bit more. And I see it as helping each other. So Brendan Bouchard put together this group for us of thought leaders, right? Of experts in personal development / entrepreneurship. And he put it together, but Jay Shetty's in it, and Lewis Howes is in it, and Dean Graziosi's in it, and Russell Brunson's in it, and Mel Robbins is in it, and Trent Shelton's in it, and a bunch of big name people in personal development who you would think would all be in competition with each other. And in one sense we are, in that we want to continue to push and strive and do the biggest thing, the biggest launch, the biggest channel. But there's more love and support for each other than it is, I need to beat this person. It's that I'm inspired by Jay Shetty. I need to up my game because he's showing what's possible, as opposed to I need to go beat Jay Shetty, right? And that's where people struggle, because the source behind the competition comes from insecurity. If you're just jealous of the other person and you need to crush them, that's coming from insecurity, as opposed to I'm inspired by this person. They're amazing. And it's showing the way for what is possible for me to be able to up my game up. So the kick is important. Just kick yourself forward instead of down. Okay, so how do we do it? Well, one, get really clear on what you want. I think a lot of people have the wrong competition, the wrong goals, the wrong role models. Like, what do you actually want? What's your goal? Is your goal to be big on YouTube? Is your goal to be a best-selling author? Is your goal to get your clothing brand off the ground? What is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? 2, then find the people who've done it. Model success. Model the right people, right? I've got people on my wall behind here, right? So these are my parents. I'm 8 or 9 years old. Steve Jobs is here, right? Okay, why are they on here? 2 very different people. So from Steve Jobs, he's a visionary. I love how he wants to put a dent in the universe. I love how he wanted them to have a huge impact. But he's not a great father, at least from all accounts, right? He wasn't a great father. My dad is my hero in terms of being a great father, but he's not a visionary entrepreneur. And so they're on the wall for 2 different reasons. My goal is to try to be a visionary like Steve Jobs. He inspired me. And my goal is to try to be a father like my father, because he inspired me. And not the other way around. Because if I'm a visionary like my dad and a father like Steve Jobs, I'm not having a really happy life. I'm getting nowhere on my goals. So who has done the thing that you want, and specific? And where people get caught up in trying to pick role models is you're trying to find one person for everything. There is no one perfect person for everything. It's not possible, because you're trying to be the best you. There's nobody else out there who is the best you. So you're taking different pieces from different people. The reason why my first top 10 was on Kanye West is because I wanted people to, even if you don't like a lot of what he does, you can still be inspired by his success. You can still be moved by some of his words. If you can eliminate the things that you don't like. If I'm doing a video as top 10 rules for success, you don't need all 10 to apply to you. You pick one thing and change your life with it. That can be the entire unlock. So there's different people for different things. Don't judge an entire person and take it or leave it. In fact, a lot of the best learnings you'll get are people who are different than you might disagree with at first, and forcing yourself to find one thing in them that you can be inspired by and learn from. That's when unlocking really happens, because if you only learn from people who are exactly like you, you're not going to learn very much. You're by definition limiting your learning. So step number 1 is get really clear on what you want to be, what your goals are. Step 2 is get specific mentors for each of those goals, specific categories. And then step number 3 is be around them more often. You know, those people that inspire you. If you love Steve Jobs, then be around Steve Jobs more often. Watch the videos. Subscribe to any channel. There's a every Steve Jobs video. Go subscribe to that channel. Create a news alert for Steve Jobs. Follow the Steve Jobs hashtag on your social platforms. Pick up Steve Jobs' books. Have a picture of Steve Jobs on your wall, right? The more you're around it, the more you're going to start thinking like he thinks on the thing that you care the most about. So it's changing up the environment so that it's not just a one-off, oh, I got inspired by that one talk or that one book. Have you ever read a book? You ever read a book, got super inspired, and then you put the book down and moved on to something else, and then totally forgot all the lessons that you learned from that book, and now you're not taking the action anymore, right? You have to consistently put it in your environment if you want to stay consistent in the action. The environment dictates the action. You didn't change your environment consistently, so the actions don't happen consistently. So whoever those people are who you want to be your mentors, your heroes, even if you've never met them, I'm never going to meet Steve Jobs, right? It's not going to happen. Keep pointing the wrong way here. Steve, I'm not going to meet Steve, right? I can still learn from him. I can still be inspired by him. He can still stare me down every time I step into my office. So get really clear on what you want and who you want to be. Get really specific role models who are, at least for that one thing, experts in their field, and then be around them consistently, and your life changes. Competition is fantastic. The key is to use it in the right way. Use it to push yourself forward. Kick yourself forward to what's possible as an inspiration to say people like this exist and I'm going to go get mine, as opposed to kicking yourself down saying that you need to bury that person or that you suck and you're never going to be able to do it. But you need to kick if you want to get unstuck from where you are right now. Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
Now, how many times have you ever woke up in the morning and had that conversation in your head? There's one voice that says, go back to sleep. You've had a really tough week. You've been working so hard. And there's another voice that says, this is going to be the start of a great week. You've had enough rest. Now's the time to get up and you're going to perform at the highest level. This is a conversation between the mind and the intelligence. The mind is the monkey mind. The intelligence is the monk mind. The monkey mind just wants to sleep, be lazy, lethargic, and not focus on getting proper rest. You probably were forced by that monkey mind to stay up the night before and watch a show till 2 a.m. anyway. The monk mind wants you to have a proactive start to the day, proactive start to the week. So here's what's happening. We have 5 senses: sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing. Now, all of these have different triggers. So if we think about food, you see good food, right? Or let's say you see junk food. You smell that junk food, you know what that junk food tastes like. You don't hear junk food, I don't think anyway. And as soon as that happens, there's a response that goes straight to your mind. Now what happens in your mind, and as you can see, this is a very accurate drawing of what your mind really looks like inside. But this area of your mind, it reminds you of your past experiences you've had. So when you see those fries, you smell those fries, you see those fries, you touch those fries, it sends a response to your mind. Your mind knows what those fries taste like. It remembers the last time you had them and how good they felt, and straight away goes, yeah, let's have them. And so the mind goes, sure, let's go and plan and create, and now we have those. Now we start to eat that. And that is a recurring habit and cycle in our life. It happens from everything from food that's bad for us to toxic relationships through to making bad career decisions. The simple act of reminding ourselves of a positive experience with someone or something allows us to continue that repetition. The way we strengthen the monk mind and the God inside our minds so that we don't just give in to the temptations and the urges of the mind is through the 4 R's format. So these 4 R's have to be done in order, and when they're executed effectively, you will know that your God and your monk mind is getting stronger. The first R is reason. You need a really powerful reason for why you're making this new change in your life. If you don't have a deep, profound reason in your life, it'll be really, really difficult. I'll give you an example. If someone says that they want to quit drinking alcohol just because they want to do it, it's different from someone saying, I want to quit drinking alcohol because I want to save my family. I want to keep my family together, and this habit is ruining our interactions, and so I really want to kick this habit. Notice the difference in reason, right? Even if we want to learn something, it's like, oh, I want to learn to play an instrument. Why? Oh, just because I feel like it. Or I want to learn to play an instrument because I want to propose by playing the piano. Notice the depth of reason. Reason is the first R that's needed to strengthen the guard, and it's almost like the guard building its foundation. So the monk mind is based on creating a strong sense of reason. Now, what I want you to do is choose that one thing you're trying to change in your life right now, and I want you to ask yourself, what's your real reason for wanting to change it? What is your deep reason for wanting to change it? Now, our reasons can also be negative or positive. A negative reason can be revenge, or a negative reason can be getting our own back or showing people, right? It's kind of like that look at me now kind of feeling. And we know that in the long term, that won't satisfy us because again, we're seeking validation from someone feeling differently about us. But our reason being for people that we love, our reason being for ourselves, our reason being a really heartfelt, deep internal belief that if we don't change this, it's not going to be good for us or the people we love. And so the first R is having a really strong reason. So I'm just going to write that down. So reason, bring a check next to reason. The second R that we need in our life is research. Your reason is given more ammunition and depth through good research. What I mean by that is you may pick up the phone to a coach. You may speak to someone who's already mastered that habit. You may focus on reading about books and watching documentaries and listen to podcasts about that subject. The more you absorb information, the more likely you are to create transformation. Remember that. The more you absorb information, the more you're likely to create transformation because now you have so much research that is consistently convincing the guard to help convince the senses. Every time you want something or see something or chase something, the guard can say, but do you remember when we read that study? Do you remember when we watched that documentary? Do you remember when you spoke to that coach? And all of a sudden you have so much more reasoning power when you research. So the second step is research, and the best way are books, podcasts, and people, right? Books, podcasts, and people are the best forms of research. When you want to create a habit change in your life, make sure that what you listen to, what you read, and what you speak about is about the subject you're trying to grow in. When you immerse yourself in that way, you will see maximum impact in your life. So the second R is research. The third R is repetition. Repetition. If we don't consistently make this a priority in our life, it's just not going to happen. We have to repeat that action. So we have to prioritize around it. And this is something I say often, right? If you really want to make something a priority in your life, it has to be a small step and a big priority. Often what we try and do is we try and change every area of our life, and then naturally nothing changes. But the better thing to do is choose one area and make it your top priority. So if you want to start going to the gym, make that the one big thing you're going to achieve that day and set a time that you can actually make it. Don't set it at an awkward time. I know someone who literally used to struggle working out. So instead of that, what she would do is when she would roll off the bed, she would have her yoga mat and all of her gym equipment laid out right near her bed. So she had no excuse, right? It was the first thing she saw in the morning. And so she could naturally start exercising straight away. That also is true for not triggering the senses, right? Repetition also includes, if you're trying to stay off sugar, if you just don't have any sugar items in your closet or in your cupboard or in the fridge, then there's no chance that you're going to have it. So you can actually save yourself by removing it from the trigger of the senses. So that is repetition. The fourth R is responsibility, right? You want to be able to do this with someone. You want to feel like you're growing with someone. That's why having a tribe or a community or a group of people that are trying to aim for the same thing means you're more likely to get there. You know, if you're trying to start a new habit like cycling more, if you're cycling with a group of people, now guess what? You're not just relying on your motivation, you're relying on 10 other people to motivate you as well. If you're going to the gym with a friend, responsibility and accountability makes you more likely to get to your destination. I feel like we give our toxic relationships and negativity so much energy. We're like for example, in your comment section on Instagram, for anyone who's on social media, for everyone who's on social media, you could pinpoint the one negative comment out of 100 positive comments. And we all do it. We amplify the negative, and you see it all the time. And we do the same in our lives, where we sit here talking about all the toxicity. And so for me, it's like, I can either spend all my energy trying to convince that one person to love me, or I can reply to the people that love me already, and they'll love me more because they are already engaged with me, and they're going to feel so happy that I responded to them. And I think this is a great, simple tip for everyone who's listening, is just when you respond to positivity in your life, it just increases. When you respond to the negativity in your life, it just increases. And so trying to get someone to like you and defend yourself and control how they feel about you, it wastes and drains so much energy. And you could use all that energy for the people that love you. When we were put out on the streets with nothing but had to fend for ourselves, and you recognize how you can actually live with very little, and how you need very little to get by. Whether it was fasting, like not being able to eat for several days or drink for several days, you recognize how grateful you are for what you do have. And so these mini experiments that are very extreme, that I'm not saying anyone has to do, or I'm not recommending anyone at home to do them. All I'm trying to say is that the body is like a vehicle. We have to take care of it. Just as you have a nice car, you got to take care of that nice car. But if you don't feed the driver, that car's not going anywhere. And so many of us have become more addicted to the vehicle than we have to the driver inside. And so the way of tapping into that driver inside is spend time with people who know their driver really well. And that's why Monks was such a big part of my growth, because you meet people who have no agenda, want nothing from you, want nothing of the world, and are not trying to get somewhere. Like there's no win-win. It's only win for you. Like there's no win in it for them. And being around the energy of realized people who have that realization, who've been with their consciousness for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, that's a huge part of it. We're being built for a job, or we're being built to be in a box.
Right.
We're being built so that we fit into society. And I find it funny, right? It's like when you're a kid, you're told to fit in. Like what you probably remember this, stay in line, like fit in, everyone has to wear a uniform, everyone dresses the same, everyone has to do this. And then when you grow older, what are we all trying to do? We're all trying to stand out. It's weird. It's like your whole life you were told to fit in, and then as soon as you grow older, it's like, oh, you need a personal brand now. You need to stand out. Like, do you know your own voice? You need to stand out.
How do you deal with it when the doubt is coming from the people that you really love and you know they care about you?
Yeah, it was hard. I didn't go to my I graduated, but never went to my graduation ceremony. So my mom doesn't have a picture of me holding my degree, and that was a big thing for her because I moved to India. I just went. So I never went to that, and that was a big thing for her. And actually, my parents, I'm very grateful. My mom and dad are actually fairly liberal and supportive of anything I've decided to do. It's my extended family that's had more opinions and been more involved in kind of stirring stuff up with my parents, if that makes sense. So the way I dealt with it was always asking myself these questions around, you know, is someone invested in my future? Is someone going to be there for me when I'm struggling? And is someone paying my bills? Like those are my three checking system of who matters in life, like your soul, your mind, and your paycheck. And I think the biggest thing I asked myself was just, am I going to look back if I don't do this? Am I going to look back, going back to the Alexander the Great story, am I going to look back on my deathbed and say, my mom and dad held me back? Because I may say I'm going to do it for them. I'm not going to do this decision because I respect them and love them. But am I going to hate them in the end, or be bitter towards them, or feel a negative feeling towards them because I feel they held me back? And if that's the truth, I never want to feel that about my parents. They're incredible. So I need to go and take the responsibility to make this shift. And I think the truth is that when we think people are holding us back, it's just us not taking responsibility for us to push forward. Like, that's all it is. Because the truth is, if you really, 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 really want something, right? Like if someone told you right now you had to get on a plane and there was $1 million in New York, no one would say, oh, my parents can't afford a plane. Like no one would say that. You would do it. If you really wanted it, you'd get on a plane right now and you'd go pick that $1 million up. So it's our own insecurity that we reflect onto the people around us. And I think it's really important. I get it. There are people who are toxic around us. I get it. I had that too. There were people who were just like, literally people said to me, like, you realize you're going to fail at being a monk. You realize when you come back, no one's going to hire you. You realize when you come back, no one's going to want to be with you. You realize, you know, there were so many things. Like people like, you know, you're going to be socially dead. Like no one's going to care where you are. There was so much of that. but it didn't get amplified because I was strong in my conviction. So the way I dealt with it was just keep strengthening your conviction rather than trying to weaken the argument. Because the opinions of others will get weakened when you strengthen your own, right? That's how it works. You don't weaken someone else's to strengthen your own. We're so used to in our life having instant judgment, defining a moment and giving it a label, good or bad, in the moment. And I thought, how do I present a concept to the world where we can laugh at ourselves and realize that sometimes our instant judgment or our instant labeling processor isn't always correct?
Yes.
How do we get that? So this script or narrative that I shared in this video is around a gentleman who goes to buy these cookies because he feels like having a few cookies because his flight's delayed, and he sits down to eat these cookies, and the gentleman opposite him, where you're sitting right now, starts to take cookies out as well. And he's thinking, how's this guy? And the guy looks a little rugged. He looks a little scruffy. He doesn't look put together. So naturally, all of our biases, our unconscious biases start coming up and stemming up. And we start thinking, oh, he looks a little shady. Or maybe he doesn't have money. That's why he's taking my cookies. And we have this impression of I, me, and mine. These are my cookies. How can he take them? Only to realize when he leaves that your cookie box was in your bag and that gentleman was sharing his cookies with you. And then this person has this epiphany or this moment of realizing how quick he was to judge, but how wrong he was. And I think all of us in different ways have different moments in our life where whether we misjudged a person the first time we met them, or we misjudged someone because of the first thing they said to us, or we had a friend that now is our best friend, but our first impression was, oh, they're a loser. And all of a sudden now we think they're amazing. Emotional intelligence to me is being able to be aware of yourself, self-awareness, being able to know yourself. That's the highest form of EQ.
Right.
Like being able to say, I know when I'm at my best, I know when I struggle, and I know when this is a limiting belief or not. And then being able to process all of that. So we're not helping people, I love saying this because it simplifies it, but we teach people what to think, not how to think.
Right.
We tell them 2 + 2 is 4, but we don't tell them how to think about a problem. And that's why when you're faced with a new problem and you don't have a formula for it and you don't have an equation for it,
right,
you're like, oh, I'm stuck, right? And life's like that. Like, when in life have you used a formula to solve a real situation in life, even business?
Yeah.
Like, when has a formula helped you?
Yeah.
But we're taught that formulas solve equations. But we all know that there's no formula to business, success, happiness, meaning, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
I literally skip over negative comments, genuinely, since day one. And I remember reading them at the start. And so I'll add this. There have been times when I've looked at negative comments and been like, that's quite funny. Like, you know, they're funny, they're true. But overall, I try to respond to everyone who said something positive, and I rarely put any energy into anyone who put anything negative, because I don't want to change their mind. They're entitled to their belief. They're okay to feel that way. And if I feel like it's good feedback, I'll take it on board. But if I feel like it's just someone being a keyboard warrior and, you know, doesn't like me and saying what they want, then I'm not going to take that seriously.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to tell the difference between the two.
100%.
If there's some authenticity and truth behind it, it's a much different comment than just unabashed hate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had everything from he has a wind machine in his videos to make sure his hair flies, right? Like, I've had that angle. And
Wait,
like,
you don't have a wind
machine? I don't. I just went out on a really windy day.
This is an exclusive on the podcast.
This is an exclusive on the podcast. I do not have a wind machine. But I've had everything from that, and I laughed at that. I thought that was a hilarious comment. Through to the other side of just like, you know, I don't agree with you, and I don't agree with the point you're making. This is my point. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I had 3 minutes to explain that, and I missed that point. Like, you're right. You know, I agree with you. If I had a podcast like this, I could have explained myself. So, you know, but I do think that we do drag our own selves down. We put all the energy into the negativity and amplify it. Another story I'll tell you, because I love this too, and it shows. So, and he'll like this story. So Marcus Aurelius, if you haven't read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, highly recommend it. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor, Meditations is his personal journal. And one of the stories that I love about him that comes up in a few Hollywood movies too, is that once when he was walking through the Roman town square, he used to have his advisor follow him around. And whenever people would glorify him and praise him, the person's job was to come into his ear and whisper, "You're just a man, you're just a man." Just to remind him just to remind him in that moment where you just, in that moment where you just feel like your ego is just going through the roof because everyone's saying, you're amazing, you changed my life, etc. To remember you're just a man. And I would add to that, remember the people who made you that, right? Wow. Remember the people who gave you that. And so that's how I've learned to balance ego, is by any time I'm glorified or praised or appreciated or recognized, I'm passing that off to my teachers, guides, mentors, the universe, and accepting it on their behalf. So if I receive an award, I actually don't think it's mine. I'm accepting it on behalf of everyone who made me the way I am.
It's beautiful.
Whether it was positive or negative too. One of my favorite thoughts from Martin Luther King is, if you want a new idea, read an old book.
What old books?
Many different ones. The Bhagavad Gita is probably one of my favorite books. It's been such a huge part of my personal journey and personal life. Many other religious texts as well. So the Bible's been a big part of my study. Spent a lot of time with the Bible. And then it can just be thoughts and ideas, even of the last 2,000 years. So Stoicism, a huge fan of Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. That's been a huge book for me that I've studied. And sometimes old can just mean 50 years or 100 years ago too. But those are some of the bigger ideas that I think have had more prominent effects in my life. So Vedic and Stoic knowledge has probably been the most influential. After a long time, the other day, my friends and I went bowling. And I started to think to myself that life is a lot like bowling. Bowling is a team sport just like life. In bowling, sometimes the best players struggle, and others that were less likely to do well surprise you and make all the difference. This is one of my favorite lessons. Focusing on someone else's score doesn't make yours any better. It's easy to get distracted by how well someone else is playing. You see their score go up, they bowl a strike or a spare, and you're calculating in your mind what you think that could be. But all that does is it distracts you from your game. Similarly, in life, focusing on someone else's Instagram grid doesn't make yours any better. Focusing on what someone else is doing for work or what they're driving doesn't make yours any better. Focus on yourself. Focus on your own role, your strengths. That will make all the difference.
I'm able to not judge myself because I don't judge others. A lot of people who
powerful.
are like, a lot of, right? Mm-hmm. So tell me, I don't know. I'm
so
just
powerful. No, I love that. That's such a great point.
How do you think
That's
about
such
that
a great point. No, you're spot on, because the reason why we judge others is because we judge ourselves, right? The opposite of what you're saying. And so for me, it's the same thing. The reason why I don't expect is because I see everything as my responsibility.
Yep.
I see everything as my work.
Yes.
And I see everything else as a bonus.
Yes.
Like, it's just amazing that anyone even cares about me or has time for me or makes an effort to do something or connect me to someone, or whatever it is. And that's just a beautiful bonus of life. But I've got to be in charge of it. And I think that just came from many years of having expectations. I think that came from times when I did expect and I didn't get, and I realized I don't want to feel this way anymore. I always talk about there's three types of creators, but we usually end up one of the two. So there's the sellout creator. A sellout creator only goes with what the audience wants. So you literally forget about anything you care about or believe in. You just go for what you think is going to get likes. And then the opposite is the selfish creator who only creates for themselves. They're like, I think this is amazing. Like, I'm the funniest person in the world, or I'm the deepest person, or whatever it is. And you create something and like no one wants to watch it because you literally made it for you and your mom. Like, it's kind of like sits there. And so I always aim for being in the middle. I recognize that I want to stand for what I believe in, but I also want it to connect and resonate and have a positive impact on other people's lives. So that's my starting point, that every piece of content should be true to me, but it should resonate with people. It should make a difference. I set a goal very early on that my videos were only 75% complete. And I say this everywhere. Actually, I've never said it often. I've never said it on a podcast, but I've said it often on stage and at events. My videos are only 75% complete, which means I mess words up often. So you'll see that sometimes my sentence wasn't perfect. I mispronounced a word. I developed a lisp on a word because it was in flow and I said it and it wasn't right, but it felt right. And other things where I finished a shoot and we forgot a shot that was huge for the video, But I'm like, it's all right, 75%. So my goal with every video is 75%. And I've had to do that because I've realized that if I wait for 75 to 99, I'll be waiting for a year and a half or 3 years.
You have 2 videos.
Yeah, I have 2 videos, right? And we release 3 videos a week right now. And so for me, the goal was always 75%. And I personally
love
think,
that.
Yeah, and I personally think that's a great aim because 75% is realistic, it's quality. So you're not settling for less, but 75 to 99 is such a long journey. I think the first thing is you've got to get comfortable being you. See, no one will ever be comfortable with you being you if you're not comfortable being you. And I think we first try and prove ourselves to other people. So my favorite, this is like, I talk about this all the time. It's probably one of my favorite pieces of insights. It's from a writer named Cooley in the 1900s. And he said, today I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. So what he means by that is we are living in a perception of ourselves. If I think you guys think that I'm nice, then I feel nice. If I think that you think I'm weird, I feel weird. So we're constantly living through the perception of someone else. So my first thing is get away from that. Take that away. Figure out how you feel about yourself. So I would say happiness is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. Right? Like how do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself, when no one else is around? We've all heard the story, and I'm just sharing it again to give context. We've all heard the story of the 2 wolves or the 2 dogs, however you want to phrase it. And if you haven't, I'll tell it now. It's a story of how inside of us there are 2 dogs, 2 wolves, and they're fighting for supremacy. So inside you, one is the initiator and one is the responding. Your whole life, you've been feeding and listening to the initiator. So your initiating wolf is strong, powerful, bulky, aggressive, because it's been fed well your whole life. And your responsive dog, your responsive wolf, has not been fed, has not been listened to. And so it's weak and feeble and meek and humble and doesn't even stand to fight. So when they 2 come to fight inside of you, this wolf's just gonna eat that wolf right up. And that's what's happening right now. So for all of us, whatever 2 wolves you're seeing, whether it's your mind and your intelligence, whether it's your intuition versus what your parents say, whether it's expectations of society versus your expectations of yourself, like whatever 2 wolves you have inside of you, the one that wins is the one you feed and the ones you have been feeding. Now, if you're at a point where you are and where I am and where all of us are in different scenarios of our life, where we're trying to shift and start feeding the other one, it's hard because the other one's just been fed more, it's stronger, it's able to push you, it's able to dictate you. And this is where detachment's so key, that detachment doesn't mean that you own nothing. Detachment means that nothing owns you. And most of us have become owned by our darker wolves. Most of us have become owned by the self that we don't want. So that conditioning has been drawn up. The only way to break it is to disrupt the pattern, to really break that. It has to be, and this is why I talk to people about immersive experiences. Like you meditating for 10 minutes a day on a headspace, that's wonderful and I recommend it, but that's not gonna shift this in a drastic way. Right. You are going to have to go and spend a week out in Joshua Tree with the shaman. You are going to have to take a break in Jerusalem, right? We were both in love with Jerusalem. Like instead of going on a holiday this year, you are gonna have to go on a 3-day intensive transformative retreat. And the reason why I'm saying all these different things is they all have different budgets. They're all available in different countries. You don't have to go to India and live with monks, but you have to do something, and it has to be immersive. Because when you get immersed in something, then you're giving something the power to break your pattern. Right. And I think the challenge is we're trying to solve it by a little thing every day, which is a good start to get us going. But if you're really serious about a massive shift in your life, wherever you're seeing that energy coming from for the right side, the responsive side, you need to go water that, you need to go feed it, you need to go give it energy. And that's what I think we find that, and that's where I think people struggle. They still want to go on their beach holiday. They're like, no, I can't give that up, I need that. Or this weekend, I still need to go and do up my house. And it's like, well, no, like, just imagine what would happen if this weekend you just went on a 3-day retreat that changed your life. Like imagine if you just gave that energy.
In terms of finding your purpose, that seems like it's the first step, is getting comfortable with yourself, understanding that. How do we take that next step towards finding that purpose?
Yeah, so for me, I define it as your passion is for you, your purpose is for others. So your purpose is when you use your passion to serve others. That's the link. So for me, the focus actually first becomes, what's your passion? Like, what are you passionate about? What do you enjoy doing? And then the parts that's usually missed. So everyone hears follow your passion, find your passion. It's like a cliche, it's everywhere. The difference is get really good at it. Like, get so good at it. And everyone always misses that point. You can be as passionate as you want about tennis, but if you're not really good at tennis, no one's going to care and no one's going to take note. And I think that's often missed, that not only do you need to find what you're passionate about, you need to turn it into an expertise, which is undeniable. And that requires the hard work, that requires the work ethic, that requires the early mornings, that requires the training in whatever field you want to be. And that's going to make you successful. So when you figure out your passion and you get really good at it, you're going to become successful. But you're only going to be happy when you use that success to help other people. And then you've got to figure out that link to purpose. So you're going to find your purpose. So when you realize, hey, I'm really good at this, I love it, I get a lot of happiness from doing it, when you start using that to make a difference in other people's lives in any way, it automatically switches into a purpose. So you don't need to find your purpose. It's just an automatic evolution of finding your passion and being really good at it. And that's where we're messing up, that we haven't found something we love, and we haven't found something that we love that we've got really good at. So what we usually do with our lives is we do things that we're not good at and don't love, right? Or we do things that we're good at but don't love. And we need to switch into the spaces of things that we love but are not good at and get really good at them, and start finding out things that you are good at and you do love. There's different ways to play the game. Some people spin the ball, some people go for a straight direct roll, some people use 2 or 3 fingers, the list continues. And the truth is, it's exactly the same in our lives. You will see some people succeeding in a certain way and others doing it completely differently. The goal is to find your way, your method, your approach, the direction that works for you without trying to copy or mimic or imitate someone else. And we've all experienced this. Sometimes your ball ends up in the gutter. I'm sure you've had that before. Sometimes your throw was completely out of control and your ball went directly into the gutter. Or maybe sometimes you actually felt well prepared and confident, but the ball still ended up in the gutter. In life, just like that ball, sometimes we feel we're in the gutter, but there's something to learn from that. And just like the ball comes back, when we learn through our experience, we get another opportunity to improve, another opportunity to try, another opportunity to succeed. As Oscar Wilde said, all of us are in the gutter, but some of us are looking up at the stars. Sometimes you hit a spare. You threw your best shot, you got the angle perfectly right, you prepared with everything you had, and that one pin is still up there. Sometimes, despite our best efforts in life, we don't get what we want. Not everything aligns. Everything doesn't go to plan. Life is a lot like bowling. Keep your eyes on the ball, your concentration in the game, and your mind out of the gutter. And in the end, we realize we have to be just like that bowling pin. No matter how hard we're hit by life, no matter how hard we're hit by others, we have to keep stepping back up. That has happened so many times when a video you think is going to hit and it doesn't. And then there's a video you're like, that's never going to hit. And it does. And that's where I've reconciled myself down, is recognizing that I don't always know what's going to work. And that's a beautiful thing. And that I've been feeling this often, that I've got to where I want in life, just not in the way I imagined it. And that's the beauty of giving up that control and feeling slightly liberated. So I'll give an example of what I mean by that. I'm always working strategically, effectively, and impactfully in the best ways I can. But sometimes the place where I put my most energy does the worst, and sometimes something that I tried on the side like blows up, and it's incredible. And that's where I've reconciled myself down, recognizing if I'm putting my best foot forward and I'm working strategically and effectively, the things that are going to work will work. And it may not be the things I expect. And what we're doing is, or what I do sometimes too, is you're so focused on wanting one thing to work, you miss the fact that there's like 9 other things that are happening that are amazing around you that you could never have dreamed of. And I've seen that in my life countless times where I wanted one thing to work, 3 things were working over here, but I was so like, why is this not working? Like, why is this not working? That you miss that. So self-doubt for me is something that I've tried to build a close relationship with. And I get it all the time. I still get it before a post, before a video, before anything. I mean, I was just I'm working on my book right now. I just launched a podcast. And before I launched the podcast, I had no idea how well it was going to do, how badly it was going to do, or anything. And there was a part of me that was like, are people going to listen to this? Like, are people going to care? Like, I ask myself all those questions still today. Number 1, I'm glad I asked myself those questions. It means I'm human. It means that I care. It means that it's important to me. I speak at so many conferences and everyone always asks me, do you still get nervous? I go, yes, I get nervous because I care. The day I stop feeling nervous, that means I don't care anymore. If I don't care anymore, that means I don't love what I do anymore. So for me, the first thing is I recognize that self-doubt just shows me that I care and that something's important to me. Whereas I don't doubt myself around things that I don't care about. Like if you asked me a question right now about what's the recipe for this amazing dish, I wouldn't know and I'd say, I don't know. And I'd be okay with it because I don't care about cooking. I'm not a cook, right? But if it's something that you care about, you'll have self-doubt. The second thing that I do with self-doubt is I go, okay, if that's the things that I'm doubting myself for, what strategies, what can I put into place to overcome them? Doubt is just a great way of making you check what you need to work on. So if my doubt is, oh my God, not enough people are going to listen to this. So I'm like, okay, so how do we make it more listenable? How do we make the content better? How do we make the conversation better? If my doubt is, I don't feel like people are going to like this topic. Okay, what themes am I good at talking about? What is, it's a great checking system to improve what you have. So don't look at self-doubt as negative. Turn it into a positive by actually asking yourself those questions, right? So build a relationship with self-doubt because it's never going to go away.
Right. Don't avoid it.
Don't avoid it. Definitely don't avoid it. It's never going to go away. So if it's never going to go away, build a happy, positive relationship with it. So my positive relationship with it is you're showing me what I need to focus on to feel less of that. And most of us feel self-doubt because we're not researching, we're not building knowledge, we're not building expertise. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is when I feel self-doubt, it's because I'll give a perfect example. When I was thinking about doing a podcast and you're doing interviews, you don't just become an interviewer. You have to watch interviews. You have to absorb good interviewers. You can't just be an interviewee. You have to watch good interviewees. And so for me, a lot of us start something and we feel self-doubt because we've never learned that skill or we've never observed that skill. So my focus is, if I want to be a good interviewer, I need to watch good interviewers. If you want to be a good stage performer, watch good stage performers. If you want to be a good monk, watch good monks, right? You don't become something good without seeing it. So self-doubt comes because you haven't upskilled. And the great thing today is you can do an online course. You can upskill from here. You can upskill from there. You can just listen to this podcast and watch you guys who've done it for such a long period of time. Seeing someone who's done something consistently, that's the best way of getting good at something. And then your self-doubt will disappear. So self-doubt can only be cut by the sword of knowledge. It can only be cut by the sword of upskilling. So that's where it starts. Right? Love is a doing word. It's active. It's a verb. And if love is a verb, then service is the action. And that's why love and service have to be so intertwined, because I feel that today when we talk about love, the definition is so skewed. When people hear the word love,
that's maybe what the problem is.
That's what the problem is. That's why I prefer service to love, because service is the activation of love. When someone loves someone, they serve. That's how love works. And I think that's why when we talk about love, I agree, it's just because of phonetics, definitions, breaking it down, love has become so badly abused. Like the word love is so abused and misused in our lives.
Hey, it really is, right?
You say, I love you to people you don't love. People use it to manipulate people. We just throw love around.
Right.
And as much as it should be everywhere, it's also sacred. Love's also sacred, and that's why you were able to experience it, because it was experienced through a sacred mechanism. You were able to experience love.
Yeah, and I've never felt it like that before, because it also was this sense of self-love as well.
Yeah, And that's what you felt in Jerusalem too, when you went. And that's what I felt. And that's what I feel, that we experience love when it's through service and engagement in that atmosphere. We don't just experience it every single day. I personally also, having become I feel like I've become even more of a seeker since being involved. And that's opened me up to alternative ideas, alternative ways of thinking, learning from all different traditions wherever I can. And I think that's a really important part. I think the challenge with being a immature seeker, in my definition of it, is you find something, it sounds cool, and you go, that's it, there's nothing else. And then a real seeker goes, well, that is it, but how can everything else even enhance this and make this even greater for me, if this is where my faith is, or this is where my belief system is? So I'm someone who genuinely loves learning from people from all different walks of life and backgrounds, because I feel if I was presented with a deeper, more meaningful philosophy and life structure, I would adopt it. That's why, because I'm open to that. We were left on the streets for 30 days to fend for ourselves and to figure it out. Just, that's it. You've got your clothes that you're wearing. There's no money, no food, no shelter, no nothing. Figure it out. And day one, I'm like, okay, like, you know, maybe it's a joke. Like, maybe they're going to come back at night and be like, no, guys, you know. So I'm trying to figure out what it is. This is training mode. And it's really interesting what your mind and body does. So the first thing your mind and body does when you have nothing is you have fear. The first thing you feel is fear. And that we can all relate to in life. The first thing you feel when you all of a sudden feel that your plan and you have nothing organized and you have no structure and shelter and all of this stuff that we now rely on, you have fear. Now the fact that you're there on your own and you don't have a phone and you can't just call someone up and you don't know the city that you're in, your next thing is survival.
Right.
Fear leads to survival mode. So you're trying to find food from everywhere, you're trying to hoard it, you're trying to get it from everywhere, you're trying to keep it, you're trying to figure out like, how can I get lots of this so that I can take care of myself? And you start just becoming crazy almost. And it's funny because those two experiences are so similar to what you see in society today.
Yeah.
Fear breeds survival mode, which breeds greed. And hoarding and wanting to have
lack of abundance.
Lack of abundance, exactly. And so you do that in that scenario for like, remember this is a 30-day experiment, it's crazy. So you do that for like the first week. You do that for the first week where you're just trying to find anywhere, steal, look, etc. Not steal, trying not to steal, but like finding fruits off trees, whatever. You're just trying to do whatever you can, finding anywhere to sleep. And you're fending for yourself. It's all about you. The interesting thing that happens in week 2 is that you recognize that you really want to, when you make a difference in someone's life, they'll help you. So by week 2, you start recognizing, oh, if I help villages, if I help this old lady, if I help this old man, if I serve the people around me, then they'll give it to me anyway. And we saw people inviting us into their homes, we saw people giving us food, we saw people cooking for us, just because we were helping people.
Wow.
And you start to see community, you start to see the value of collaboration, you start to see the value of energy exchange, you start to learn how your heart and soul leads to other people giving you their heart and soul. And you experience that. Now the interesting thing is that goes on for about 2 weeks and you think you've kind of mastered it.
Right.
And then the biggest challenge comes when this is what you're meant to grow to, and this is where you go beyond feeling good about serving and getting an exchange. And this is not spoke about as prominent today because I think we live in a world where people aren't self-loved and self-fueled enough to even consider this. And so we talk a lot about self-love today, which I highly believe in. Right. We talk a lot about non-judgment of yourself today, which I highly believe in. But this principle is beautiful. We recognized by the final week that actually we were far stronger and capable than a lot of people on the planet, a lot of people in the village, that were disabled, that couldn't see, that had lost their eyesight, that couldn't speak, that couldn't walk, they had broken limbs. And so by the end of it, we realized that when we served others and gained, we could actually give to those people because they didn't have, because they weren't young men like we were, they weren't able men like we were, they weren't skilled like we were. And that
so you can even go another level.
You could go another level. It wasn't just that you could take care of yourself, you could go another level. But those 3 stages of transformation show us exactly the 3 stages we need. The first is getting over your greed and ego. The second one is recognizing that you have value, and when you serve others, there's a value exchange. And the third, when you're feeling full and overflowing, you can then overflow to others. And so for me, that 30 days has transformed my life ever since. because I was able to experience all of the experiences we experience today, but in heightened mode. Like I didn't know where I was going to sleep or where I was going to eat. And when you experience it at that extreme and you're able to work it out, now you have more perspective, you have more gratitude, you have more ability to navigate that emotion again. And you recognize that it is an emotion. So for me, that was one of the most transformative things that I've ever done.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, and it just really took me on an internal journey of overcoming fear, overcoming greed, and always recognizing that you can always go that one step above, and recognizing that you don't, as soon as you think you've figured it out, recognize that you haven't, and that there can be another level. And I think for all of us, that's a great reminder for me that when I think I have it figured out, that's the biggest reminder of there's still another level you've got to go. I think on a personal level, I value deep thought because I loved rap music. So I used to listen to a lot of rap music growing up. And so people like Tupac, Eminem, Nas, etc., their lyrical abilities and their lyrical expression was a huge part of me growing up. And I used to spend a lot of time writing lyrics myself and playing with words. And I always enjoyed expressing things through poetry or spoken word. And when I read these books, a lot of them felt like poetry and spoken word. There were a lot of, not just rhyme, but there was a lot of creative expression there. So I almost was very interested or intrigued because of the way the philosophy was being communicated. But I wouldn't say I was looking for it or seeking or any of that sort. I was just like, oh, this is impressive. This is interesting thought. Maybe I can apply it in my music, or maybe I can use it here. It was less about the search for knowledge or wisdom. It was more about, oh, this could be cool to talk about here, or this would be interesting to extract from.
And when did it begin to change? When did your attitude towards theological texts or great spiritual works change from a kind of utilitarian curiosity that it could be magpied into hold on a minute, there's something in here that's going to alter me?
So I think the big thing for me was the first time I met a monk. And it's something that you can't ask someone like, oh, when was the first time you met a monk?
My first monk. God, I was just a slip of a girl then, back in Kent, picking apples on the coast. So tell me, what was your first experience?
So I remember I was around 18 years old, and I found out from a friend that this monk had been invited to speak at a university. And I was pretty uninterested to go. I wasn't really fascinated by it. And I actually remember saying to my friend, as long as we go out afterwards, I'll turn up to the event. So if we go to a bar afterwards.
As usual, dragged even to the feet of a monk by lust.
Yeah, literally. And so he said, yeah, I promise you. And he was getting into spirituality and interested by these things. So I went along. And I was captivated.
Who was it?
So this man's name is Gauranga Das. He lives in India. I think you might have met him at the Eco Village. So he built the Eco Village. So you might have met him when you went there.
In Mumbai, the Krishna Consciousness Eco Village, where it's like 100% carbon footprint free. They grow their own fruit and veg using, let's face it, human poo. like it's there's animals there. They're growing
fragrant flowers.
It's sort of amazing place. It's sort of beautiful, isn't it?
It is.
I expect you're like me, thinking, what systems could we replicate in order to save the world?
Absolutely.
And that seems like one. So you met,
So I met him.
What's his name again?
Gauranga.
Gauranga.
So he was speaking, and just to put it in context for everyone listening, this man is Indian. He has a strong Indian accent. He's not necessarily externally attractive to the kind of person I'd be attracted to. At that time, I was attracted to
Tupac.
Yeah, exactly.
And women.
Right. And rags to riches stories. I loved celebrities and influencers and people who'd made money. Like, that's who I looked up to. People who'd gone from nothing to something. And then I'm here listening to this man wearing robes, and I'm totally captivated. I'm just like, wow, he's so fascinating. And the reason that he was fascinating is because he was talking about selfless service. And he talked about how real meaning, real happiness, real fulfillment from life comes when you're able to plant trees under whose shade you do not plan to sit. So you want to give shelter to others. You want to provide things for others without expecting something back from them. And at that time, that idea just penetrated through my whole being.
Why? When it's directly contradictory to your experience up to that point? Why is this message relevant?
So I think two things. One thing is I was looking for a thrill in my teens, and that's when I was getting involved in all sorts of wrong ideas, wrong activities, or wrong in the sense of things that we wouldn't recommend or want our children to
What do
get
you mean,
involved in.
drugs, sex, fighting?
Totally, yeah, all of that. Violence, petty theft, all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't doing it because I wanted stuff. I was doing it because I wanted a thrill in life. And when I saw him and saw the way he was living, he had made that process thrilling. Like, he looked happy. He looked more happy, more content, more fulfilled than anyone I'd ever seen. On top of that, he was extremely charismatic. And I just thought, I want to get to know this man. And then I found out that he'd given up jobs at some of the biggest companies in the world. And he went to IIT and had studied at IIT, which is the MIT of India, the Indian Institute of Technology. He was like a gold medalist at this place. And he'd given that all up to be a monk, to serve humanity. And I thought, wow, that's unbelievable, because he's given up everything that everyone that I know is chasing, but he's happy and he's found meaning and he's found that fulfillment that I feel is just emanating from who he is. So it was the first time in my life where I'd gone from not looking up to someone who went from nothing to something, but someone who'd gone from something to nothing. And that was a massive paradigm shift moment for me, and a massive moment of just, wow, there is more out there. And I constantly say this, and I say it often, it's, you can't be what you can't see. I would not have wanted to be a monk if I didn't see a monk who was fulfilled and happy and had this power about him. And up until that point, anyone that I'd seen that was rich or successful or beautiful or had a beautiful looking model girlfriend or whatever it was, they still didn't emanate that happiness for me. So I saw that very early on, not in the extreme sense. I didn't have celebrity friends or anything, but from what I saw, I could very clearly see that material things weren't making people deeply happy. And he was someone who had given that up and seemed happy to me. There's a beautiful Indian story about a musk deer with a really powerful lesson. Now, you may have already heard of musk, maybe because it exists in your perfumes or your aftershaves or deodorants as a scent. And this scent is one of the most expensive natural products in the world, fetching 3 times its weight in gold. Now, when this deer comes across this aroma, this scent, it becomes completely captivated. It searches through the forest day and night for the source of this scent. Completely intoxicated by this incredible fragrance, the deer searches in every corner, in every place to find where it's coming from. The deer completely exhausts itself looking for the source, with the bitter irony and not recognizing that the fragrance comes from inside its own body. The fragrance musk is produced in a gland in the deer's body. The deer spends its whole life searching for outside what was always hidden inside. I heard this example when I lived as a monk to describe the human condition of life. How we spend our whole lives looking for pleasures and happiness outside of us, when actually what we're searching for is right there inside of us. We try to find joy and happiness in external pleasures, in things, in results, when actually real happiness comes from meaning, relationships, and a connection with oneself. See, we all know that we can't love someone we don't know. So how can you love yourself when you don't know yourself? And just as this musk deer, we've probably had similar experiences. How many times have you walked out of your home and then felt that you've forgotten one of those top 3 things? Usually your keys, your wallet or purse, or your phone. You rush back in, you look around your own home, you make a mess, you make havoc, you look under every seat, every corner, and then realize that that phone, that wallet or purse, or those keys were in your back pocket. In the process of seeking happiness externally, we make a complete mess of our minds and life, and sometimes even the lives of others, not realizing that what we were truly looking for has always been with us. Today, we hear a lot about self-love and self-care, but neither of these are possible without self-knowledge, without self-realization, without self-awareness. Remember, if we don't know ourselves, we can't love ourselves. I remember, and this is like one of those moments, I remember being 10 years old in the school playground. The cutest girl at school had just found out that I fancied her, like every other guy at school liked her. And I remember a group of girls standing behind me in the playground, just taking the mick out of me and taking the fun out of me, saying, oh, how can Jay think that he could be with her because he's so ugly and fat and all the rest of it. And I look back at that and I'm so happy it happened, because I think it's let me be more compassionate, let me be more empathetic, it's let me not be egotistical. It's humbled me and made me more grateful and realize how much hard work it is being any way that we are. And so more accepting of reality. So I'm not upset about it at all. It's something that I think helped me. Our identity should start with unlearning everything that we think we know about ourselves.
Okay. How do we unlearn?
So the best method of unlearning is this. First, and I'm going to get really strategic and tactical, because I think that people need to know what to do rather than a concept. The first thing you do is write down everything you currently are chasing in your life. Make a long list.
Your goals, your dreams.
Your goals, your dreams.
Accomplishments.
Anything that you're currently chasing and pursuing.
Okay.
Write them down. You can write down 3, you can write down 5, you can write down 10, depending on how ambitious you are. Second line. Ask yourself, what is the source of that? Where did you get that idea? Did you get that idea from a TV show you saw? Did you get that idea from your parents? Did you get that idea from your mom and your dad, your sister, your cousin? Did you get that idea because your friend just got proposed to on Instagram? Did you get that idea because your friend just got promoted? Did you get that idea because you just broke up?
Right.
Or did you get that idea because you just feel it when you do it, that you feel alive?
So give me a specific example that you had when you were 15, 18, was like a goal or accomplishment that you were chasing, and where it came from.
Absolutely. So my goal when I was young was to be an investment banker. And when I really asked myself, where did that come from? It came because in my community, small community in London, the most successful person financially was an investment banker. So I believed you had to be an investment banker to be successful.
Right.
So when I asked myself that question, where does that come from? It comes from society's version of success, not mine. And then the third thing you ask yourself is, well, then what is mine? What is coming from inside of me? And if you just do that 3-step process, now what you're doing is you're filtering out the noise and you're starting to listen to your voice. The thing is, you've got a voice inside of you, but it's quiet. It's like Jay, like take note of me, like Lewis, you know, and it's just like trying to get through, and the noise of everyone else's opinions is so loud. So this way you filter it. We always have been trained to focus on the results. So people ask, what do you want in life? And I'm like, forget that. That's the worst question to ask someone. Because when you ask what you want, that's when the ads come in. And you're like, oh, I want that car, I want that home, I want that dress, I want that body, I want whatever it is. My question to you is, what do you want to wake up and be every day? Like, what do you want to wake up and do every day? What's the process that you're in love with? So we're thinking about the result, whereas my question is, forget the result. What's the process that you're in love with doing? So start there, first of all. Don't start your journey of saying, I want to be a movie director because I want to, I want to hit the blockbuster charts. So I want to do this. Don't make it about that. Like, don't be like, I want to be a singer because I want to be Ariana Grande, right? Like, that's not the point. That's just a result. Do you love singing every day? And I realized this with a very honest question to myself. I'm really passionate about football, soccer. I absolutely love the game. I grew up on it. I'm still a huge fan. I missed out on it when I was a monk. I've been catching up ever since. Any football game. I was just in London last week and I made sure I went. I couldn't see a game live, but I went and watched it at a bar in London, and I love the energy. I'm so passionate about soccer. I don't have what it takes to be a soccer player.
Yeah.
Like, I do not want to wake up at 4 a.m. I wake up at 4 a.m. to meditate. When I was a monk, I wake up at 5:30 a.m. now to meditate. I do not want to wake up at 4 a.m. to go out on a raining pitch and play soccer. Like, I don't want to be in the gym for 4 hours a day. I want to meditate for 4 hours a day, but I don't want to play soccer for 4 hours a day and then be in the gym and train. I'm not envious of any athlete in the world because it takes a different type of mindset. I really believe that everything we say, that beautiful thought from Gandhi where he said that when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in line, then you'll experience harmony. And I've really taken that to heart, and it's this powerful spiritual principle, and it really means a lot to me.
What you think, what you say,
and what you do are aligned. And so for me, any form of language, any form of your emotional vocabulary is building your mental reality. And I think people forget that their vocabulary is defining their life. You are creating your life on a daily basis by the words you use. So for me, and I'm not saying that I feel that way about everyone else. I'm saying that's how I feel about that word. Someone may say, oh, when I say a swear word, it makes me laugh. For me, it doesn't. That I would only swear when I felt bad. I felt something negative towards something. So for me, that had negative emotions, negative connotations, and negative intention attached to it. So I wanted to remove anything from my vocabulary that I felt was negative. So even as simple as, and I've done this very recently, but it's changed my life, instead of me saying I'm busy or it's been a busy week, I say I'm having a productive week. And I feel different when I go to bed, just by that simple change. I go to bed thinking, yeah, I've had a really productive day today, rather than going, God, I had a busy day today. Like, I don't want to wake up tomorrow. I'm going to have a busy day tomorrow. And so that simple emotional vocabulary change has just catapulted my mind into feeling excited and enthusiastic all the time. I was really shy. I didn't enjoy stages. I didn't enjoy speaking. My parents forced me to go to public speaking and drama school. So I spent 14 to 18 in public speaking and drama school. Changed my life. I did not know what I wanted to speak about. So even when I finished at 18, I still didn't like going on stage because I didn't have anything to talk about. So now you've got the tools, but you haven't got the passion. So I developed somewhat of an expertise in 4 years, but I didn't have what I was passionate about. And then when I became a monk, I was like, this is it. This is why I went to public speaking school, because I love talking about philosophy. I love talking about science. I love talking about culture. I love talking about life. I love talking about growth, etc., the mind. So I got what I was passionate about when I became a monk. So for me, the process came from 4 years of consistent public speaking school. Like, it changed my life. And that's all thanks to my parents for forcing me to go. I had no interest in being a public speaker or a storyteller or any of these things. That was just, I lucked out. And then it was me finding what I was passionate to speak about. And then I've spoken for 3 hours a day for the last 13 years. And I spoke to audiences of 0 all the way to audiences now of thousands. But when I first started speaking, I remember I was invited to speak at a university where I wasn't getting paid for. I was like 20 years old. I was invited to speak to this university. No one showed up. Twice. So they organized 2 events for me. I was meant to speak about life, philosophy, etc., all the kind of stuff I speak about now, and 0 people turned up. And I practiced my speech both times to an empty room as if it was a packed room, because I was like, I'm still going to practice. And so for me, having done this for 3 hours a day for the last 13 years, that's now being gratefully received online. So I'm very fortunate that it's shifted from an offline world to an online world, which we can dive into. Yeah. But the point is, it's been my absorption and addiction for over a decade now. One of the biggest mistakes we make is that we confuse inexperience with being unqualified. So because we've not tried a lot of things, we just naturally believe that we can't be that good at them. Mm-hmm. So if I've never spoken on a stage, I just think, oh, I'm probably not good at that. Or if I've never played golf, I'd probably think, oh, I'm probably not good at that. And so we start writing off things without even trying them. So the best method I can share with someone is take the next month, take the next 4 weekends in the month, that gives you 8 days, and get really tactical. Every single day.
That's why you're playing tennis a lot right now.
Yeah, playing tennis. Take the 8 days, go join a course, an online course, a workshop, go and shadow a friend, go to a seminar, a conference, go to reading a book, listen to a podcast. Go and expose yourself to 8 different things in a month.
8 different things?
8 different things in a month. And guess what? In a month, you will have learned what you probably would have learned in 8 years, because most of us test 1 new thing a year.
Maybe.
If that, exactly, right? Like, some people don't even do that. But if you do 8 different things in a month, and this is how you have to see it. If you went to 8 different restaurants in a month, you ask yourself after you eat a meal, like, I had that burrito or I had that taco. Did I like it? Right? The first question you ask yourself is, did I like it?
You gotta try it first.
You gotta try it first. You gotta go to the restaurant.
Yeah.
There's no point. So you gotta say, did I like it? The second question you ask yourself is, why did I, or why did I not like it? Mm-hmm. Like, why is so important? I think too many people just go, I like it or I don't like it. Why didn't I like it? And the third question you have to ask yourself, really, really simple, is, do I wanna do it again? And if you do, that's where you start uncovering. So my point is, inexperience. Do not misinterpret inexperience for a lack of qualification. In the hope for money, in the hope for success, we end up chasing the wrong things and we make a mess. We end up with less than we started with, end up with more issues than we bargained for. Whilst climbing that ladder and that stairway, we forget why we started climbing in the first place. Once, the king of Bhutan was asked by an interviewer what the GDP of Bhutan was. He was surprised and shocked. He replied by saying, in Bhutan, we don't just measure the GDP, we measure the GNH. Instead of just measuring the gross domestic product, we measure gross national happiness. In the process of getting older, we forget the real goal of life. If you could make a little less and spend more time doing what you love, would that make you happier? Don't trade your happiness for what you think you need. Things can never make us happy because they're temporary and limited, but experiences can last forever. Too many people are working hard on things they don't love, to spend money they don't have, to buy things they don't need, to impress people they don't like. When we create our identity around what we do, a career, a job, an occupation, we can never be happy because we're basing it on something external. But when we create an identity around who we are and what we want to be and become, then anything is possible. And remember, we become successful by what we get, but we become happy by what we give. Don't get the two confused. I start off the chapter with this beautiful thought from Charles Horton Cooley, and I love telling it because it's just the best. And I think it was written in like the 1900s. And he said, today the challenge is, I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
And it's like, it blows my mind. Every time I say it, it gives me the chills, like I feel it. And the reason why I start with identity is because I think that's the root of all our challenges. And the first step to thinking like a monk is starting at the root, not starting at the symptoms or the superficial or the surface level, but let's go to the root. If you're playing a role, if you're wearing a mask, if you're dressed in clothes that are not yours, then you end up living a life that's not yours. And in the book, I give this example of method acting.
Yes, so, with Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, I'm a massive movie junkie, and I love method actors. So people like Heath Ledger, of course, from the Dark Knight series. You've got Jared Leto. So Jared Leto, when he played the Joker in, this is not in the book, in Suicide Squad, he used to send dead rats in the mail to his co-stars.
He did not.
He did, because he was trying to get into the mindset of how someone that perverted would behave. And then Daniel Day-Lewis, when he was filming for Gangs of New York, he's actually wearing these coats that are centuries old so that he can get into character when he's off camera. Yeah, when he can feel it, right? He's not wearing watches. He's not carrying around his mobile phone. They're speaking in the accents. And he talks about how he actually went crazy. Because guess what? When you fake being someone for so long, you think it's your reality. And that's what happens to all of us. We play a role at work, we play a role at home, we play a role with our family, we play a role with our friends, and then we think that role is us.
Right.
And we lose ourselves. And to me, that is the core reason why we're chasing things that are not important to us. The envy actually is more of a expression of how we feel about ourselves rather than how we're perceiving someone else. It's actually so much more about how comfortable we feel with who we are, how confident we feel with who we are, how much self-esteem we have, how much self-assurance we have. Envy is more a root of that than it is of the fact that someone else is doing well. It's less about the fact that someone out there is amazing, making waves, doing something that you want to be doing. It's more about how we feel about ourselves, and it's experienced in that way of looking at someone else and reflecting back on us. Social circles, family circles, someone else has done amazingly in their exams, someone just landed a new job, someone else just got promoted, and everyone's looking at you going, what are you doing? Right, what have you achieved? Where are you today? Where have you got? Right, what's happening with you? Tell us about you. And you're thinking, you know, you're going through all your head, you're trying to come up with all the things that you've thought about, all the things that you've achieved, all the things that you've done, and you're trying to bring it up, like constantly. But you're struggling, you find it hard because you're now measuring your growth based on someone else's. You're now measuring your success based on someone else's. And that is the biggest challenge with envy. That one of the biggest challenges it brings in our life is that it forces us to start measuring our success in comparison to someone else's. That is the biggest challenge with envy. When we start comparing the level of our success with someone else's, you're already on the wrong foot. I think any sorts of dress or any sort of, whether it be, dress or appearance or any of that, if it's taking you away from who you actually are and how you like expressing yourself, then that kind of contradicts being able to be authentic being real. So that I feel more authentic wearing this than I did wearing my robes when I was a monk. Literally use your weekends and evenings to do a test on anything. The best way is go and do a course, test it out. Try doing it once. Go and shadow someone who does it, someone in your life that does it. If you want to be a podcaster, come and shadow you guys for a week, right? And see what that life's like. See what it actually looks like to research, to sit with a guest, to find new guests, to work it out. Like, go and shadow someone who's already doing it. And then try and do it for a day. Like, try and do the schedule of someone you look up to for a day. Like, if you can do that for a day and you loved it, then do it for one more day. And if you loved it, do it for another day, and that's going to trickle in. So that's a much smarter way to finding your passion, rather than just sitting there and reflecting, which is cool, which is important. But I'd encourage you to just get out there, right? Get out there and live the life of someone who's doing it when they started. That's another point. Don't focus on what people are doing now. Focus on what they were doing when they started. So a lot of people ask me, they're like, Jay, how many videos do you make a week? I'm like, I make 3 videos a week, plus my podcast on top of that, plus Instagram. And they'll say, oh, wow, that's too much. And I was like, yeah, but when I started, I made 1 video a week, right? Like, you don't have to start at what I'm doing now. Like, you start. So that, go back to that.
How boring would it be to live in a world where everyone was just like us? Imagine if everyone in your life talked like you, thought like you, walked like you. The world would be a boring place. There'd be no new cultures to explore, no new languages to learn, no new adventures to be had.
If you want another amazing Jay Shetty video, check it out right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe. I'll see you there.
Don't start your journey of saying, I want to be a movie director because I want to, I want to hit the blockbuster charts. I want to do this. Don't make it about that.
The number one thing that you have to do if you want to have success, the number one thing that I've seen over and over and over and over and over